Welcome back, everyone, to another reaction video. Well, we're going to try something a little different than our usual history content today. From time to time, I like to dive into geography, and that's what we're going to do today because geography and history are often related, especially when it comes to expansion of countries into new territories, exploration, naming, all those sorts of things. So this is a channel we've never looked at before, but this actually showed up. One of the cool things we have as YouTubers is we have access to this little feature where we can see what other kinds of content our viewers are watching. So it'll tell me, for example, people who watch your channel are also watching these channels. It doesn't tell me individually. I don't know what you, John, yes, you, John, and you, Ann, I see what you're watching, Ann. No, it's not like that. It's just a cumulative among all viewers. And so I can see specific videos that you guys are watching too. And this actually showed up as one of the videos that many of my viewers were watching. So I thought it'd be fun. We'll take a look at it, maybe dive into some history behind some of the things that is talked about in this video. As always, you can go check out the channel Lost in the Pond for yourself through the link down in the description. Let's dive into this one.
Hello and welcome to another year. 2026 for me was commemorated by a family member of mine that bought me this calendar for Christmas, even though I have a calendar on my phone. What an idiot. But as you can see, this calendar is showing off some of America's national parks. And
so he's British, and he obviously, I mean, he's got a lot of American stuff, Route 66, American flag, but also some British stuff on the one side. But I already love the British humor that's coming out in this. That's great.
Between bites of turkey sandwiches, this little thing got me to think about, where are they all on the American map? Except my mental map of the United States is much different from reality. And so when I look at a real map of America, I realize that my perceptions are way off. Maybe your perceptions are off too. And so I thought I'd put this to the test by drawing your attention to some of the weird ways that we misperceive where some American places are in relation to other ones. Of course, if you are the sort of person who is perceptive but hasn't subscribed to this channel, do that now.
Hey, while you're at it, subscribe to this one too, please and thank you. I don't say that very often.
Meantime, let's have our minds blown by maps. Pose for the thumbnail. And I want to start this list by talking about our neighbour to the north, and I don't mean Suburban Sue. I'm talking about, of course, and it needs no introduction, Canada. Why did you write Canada? It's Canada. When we think of Canada...
America's hat. And no, we're not going to take Canada. No, we're not going to take Greenland either, so... Anyway.
We think of cold climates and northern territories. In no way whatsoever do I imagine that living here in Chicago, I am situated further north than parts of Canada, but I am. See, this is Middle Island, a weird name given that it's Canada's most southern point. And as you can see, it's more or less along the same line of latitude as Chicago.
Yeah, one of the fun things that we would do, so you see Kelly's Island right here. If you go down just south of there, you're at Cedar Point, which is the amusement park. It's for many years rated top amusement park in the world. And on a clear day, we would always talk about how from the top of like the, some of the tall roller coasters, like the Magnum XL 200 was the first roller coaster ever higher than 200 feet. That was back when I was in high school. And then, of course, you had like the Millennium Force, which was like 400 feet. And, we talk about how you could see Canada from the top, even though you're in Ohio.
Southern point. And as you can see, it's more or less along the same line of latitude as Chicago. So you might be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, you said that you were north of Canada. Why did you lie to us? I didn't lie. Calm down. I live north of downtown. Anyway, this isn't really about me. The primary reason that I wanted to bring Middle Island to your attention is that it's not just more southerly than Chicago. After all, that's not completely implausible, especially since Chicago itself turns into a winter hellscape. No, what actually shocked me about Middle Island, Canada, is that it's also further south on the most northern reaches of California.
Yep.
That's right, the state that gave us Rocky Road ice cream, the Mai Tai cocktail, and the
Rocky Road is one of the original kinds of ice cream. It was one of the very first flavors that was ever developed. I think it was like chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, and then Rocky Road.
temperature ever recorded is completely and utterly a little bit further north than Canada. Just like Middle Island, the city of Doris, California is located along the 41st parallel. However, Doris is about 0.28 degrees closer to the North Pole. Admittedly, that's only about 35 miles, but it is closer nonetheless. And in such cold climates, nothing sounds better right now than a warm cup of coffee.
So one of the other things that always blows me away is when I look at a map of Europe compared to the United States. Europe is, by and large, further north than the U.S. Ohio, we are in the north of the United States, right? I mean, we're not the furthest north. We're not up there like where Minnesota or Maine are, but we're in the north of the United States. We were part of the North during the Civil War, and we're roughly equal to Spain on the map in terms of how far north we are. It seems weird because Spain's climate's kind of like Florida's, but it's all part of the complicated way that weather works and the ocean currents and the breezes and all that kind of stuff that's happening. So that always really fascinates me.
Since America is a country that loves its firsts, I'll give you a couple from my life. The first state that I ever visited was Florida, and the first state that I lived in was Indiana. The first of those is known for its beach properties.
So for me personally, and you all have stories like this, I'm sure, I visited probably 25 or 30 states before I ever visited the state up north, the one whose name we don't say in Ohio, which is weird because, I'm only about 2.5 hours from it. And I had been to like Florida and Arizona before I was ever in that state up north. I've now been to 49 states. Utah, I'm coming for you.
Facing the Atlantic Ocean. And the second is known as the Crossroads of America. So imagine my surprise when I stopped using my mental map of America and looked at an actual one and discovered that Florida also somehow manages to be due south of Indianapolis. I'm not kidding, right? Don't rely on your brain. Pull up an actual map right now and look at it. There's Indiana. Can you believe it? Like, how on earth did that happen? Are these cartographers going in there and changing the maps when no one's looking? Because there's no way that when I lived in Indianapolis, I lived further east.
Yeah, but that said, you are further east than a tiny sliver of Florida. I understand his point, but most of Florida and most of Florida's population is, further to the east. It's in the up and down skinny part, the panhandle.
Than the east
Not
coast,
the panhandle. The panhandle is that part there.
Apparently I did. So I'm done with Florida.
I give him 2 seconds before he changes his mind.
Actually, I'm not.
I said it. Didn't I say it?
That's because
Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Florida. Nothing against the people of Florida, but as far as visiting, it's touristy, it's crowded, it's hot, it rains a lot. Not my place.
At a point due south from here in Chicago, I'd narrowly miss Florida by about 15 miles.
Yeah.
And that's because, as we just saw, the Florida Panhandle stretches further west than our mental maps would have us believe. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, isn't that great? Your city is almost on the same line of longitude as Florida. Is that all you've got? And in a word, no, actually, which I've just realized is 2 words. If I were to continue my journey due south, how long do you think it would take before I reach the coast of South America?
Well, that's all. South America is all east of the United States.
Ha! It's a trick question, because it turns out that South America is entirely to the east of this imaginary line. And if that's not gobsmacking enough for you, try this. South America is also entirely more eastern than Tampa, Florida. And why is that amazing, Lawrence? Because in my head, North America is here and South America is here on my lap, awkwardly. Our mental map tends to inform us that South America is entirely south of North America, which makes sense given that they're called North and South America. In reality, most of the United States lies further west than South America. So while we're in the business of renaming famous North American landmarks, perhaps North America should be redesignated as Northwest America for the next...
Is he wearing a shirt with Abraham Lincoln on it? And are we looking at Cleveland now? This is Cleveland. So this is my, one of my 2 big cities, right? I'm an hour from Cleveland and I'm an hour from Pittsburgh. Actually, I'm about 50 minutes from Pittsburgh now, where I live, and about an hour and 10 minutes from Cleveland. But you got Terminal Tower here, which for a long, long time was the tallest building in Ohio. That's the Key Bank building, which is now the tallest building in Ohio. It's like 900 and some feet. Here's Rocket Mortgage Arena, or Rocket Arena, I guess it's called now. That's where the Cleveland Cavaliers play. And then just coming into frame there, that is the I guess, is it Progressive Field now, where the Guardians play. And the reason they're called the Guardians now, since we changed them from the Indians, is because this bridge right here has these statues at the edge of the bridge that are like, they're like golems or something, and they're called the Guardians of Traffic. And yes, that's where we got the name for our baseball team. I'm not totally opposed to changing the name from Indians, but I feel like we could have done a lot better than Guardians.
Next one, just get an establishing shot of Cleveland looking exactly how everyone imagines Cleveland to look. If I were to ask you which US city is further west, Atlanta, Georgia, or Cleveland, Ohio, what would you first thought?
Atlanta,
just
just
barely.
barely.
To Cleveland. Cleveland is most...
And see, I love this shot because I love how Terminal Tower looks at night. It's kind of like, you go to New York City and the Empire State Building, they always do different colors for it. Terminal Tower does the exact same thing.
Decidedly in the Midwest. And in my mental map, the Midwest is much further west than Atlanta, which, like Florida, is on the East Coast. But unfortunately, that only goes to show that my mental map is completely off the map. You see, firstly...
Well, here's the thing, and this goes to the nature of how the United States came into being, right? We started with just the East Coast, the original 13 colonies, which even those didn't have the borders they have today. They were kind of cut in half by the Appalachian Mountains. And so this here, Ohio, the state up north, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin, this in 1787 was called the Northwest Territory, the Northwest Territory. Not even the Midwest, it was the Northwest. And that's because if you figure this is the country, that is to the northwest. And so it made sense to call this area here the Midwest. Yes, we in Ohio are the furthest east part of what you call the Midwest, but it's really more of a cultural designation than it is a geographic one. But again, and we'll probably do a video on this sometime. Culturally, we're so divided. Where I live is about right here. I live in Mahoning County, which is part of what was the Connecticut Western Reserve. So we're very much a Yankee culture, I guess you could say. Whereas if you go to the county south of me, Columbiana County, you are into Appalachia. I mean, it does literally change. I mean, the people at my church, which is 45 minutes from me to the south, have a southern accent, many of them. They have a different accent than I do, very much.
While it does border the Atlantic Ocean and therefore is an East Coast state, Georgia is mathematically the least easterly state in that region. Furthermore, its capital city, Atlanta, is about 260 miles away from the nearest beach, making its East Coast tag hard to justify. Still, it is very much in the eastern US, so surely Cleveland is the furthest west. Well, unbelievably, that's not true, because there's something else that's hoodwinked me here, something that I touched on a few weeks ago. When I found out that I was moving to the Midwest, I thought, that's great, I've heard good things about the American West. Mountains, gunslingers.
The West is the West. I mean, right, that's California, Arizona, New Mexico, and even New Mexico is really not on the West Coast, right? But it's the West for most of us. You have to remember, too, that most of the U.S. population is east of the Mississippi. And so for most of us, the West is anything once you get to like Texas, even though it's really central United States.
Golden Gate Bridge. And then I moved here and realized, oh, this isn't really the West, is it? Certainly not the middle of the West. It's not really the east of the West, if there's such a thing. In fact, when you look at it on a map, it's more like the west of the east, which I've since learned is confusing to a lot of Americans. So imagine what it's like for a foreigner coming here. And so there you have it. Atlanta, Georgia is further west than Cleveland, Ohio. And speaking of the West, that brings us on to the confusing state of affairs that is Los Angeles. And I'm not just referring to the traffic, I'm referring to its location.
Let me tell you, the traffic is every bit as bad as they say it is. I spent a week in Pomona, which is east of Los Angeles, and I was speaking at schools in Pomona, and I went downtown on a day off that I had. It was like on a Tuesday night, and it took me 2.5 hours to get back to Pomona. It was like 35 miles.
I think of Los Angeles, I think of palm trees and Santa Monica Beach. Things that say this
mountains.
Is the most west of western cities.
Mountains.
That is until you realize that not only is most of California further west than LA, but the same is even true of Reno, Nevada. And I want to pause on that fact.
I mean, so Reno is right by Lake Tahoe. I mean, that's a beautiful part of California. One of the most beautiful places I've ever been, the area around Lake Tahoe.
because I've just now had a theory as to why my mental map of America is so often messed up. I think part of it is governed by my expectations around the climate of a certain place and that expectation not being met by where it is on a map. But I think another big thing is this.
Size.
Much of America, as I've said before, is built up of straight lines and occasionally rectangles. So when you get to these coastal areas, like in Atlanta and Florida, but also out here in California, and she has these wonderful curves, please don't take that out of context, it sort of throws the whole thing off. And perhaps nowhere is this more noticeable than in our final entry, dog. It must be that mapping quirks and politics have a lot in common, because just like presidential elections of years gone by, everything hangs on Florida. From the alignment of Indiana to the misalignment of South America, right through to the northern country of Mexico. Stop right there. Did you just say northern country, Lawrence? Yeah, you heard me right. Because we finished today with an example much like the one with which I started, except now we're going to talk about the neighbour to the south, who's also to the north. It's very confusing. Because what if I were to tell you there are parts of northern Mexico that sit further north than not just Tampa, Florida, but all of Florida. Not to mention parts of Arkansas, which is one whole Louisiana away from the southern coast. Specifically, Tijuana in Baja, California. And what can I tell you about that place? Well, it is among the most northern and western places in the whole of Mexico. Which is funny because it's just 136 miles away from Los Angeles, which, as I told you about a moment ago, is anything but west.
All right, so I'm going to add a few of my own favorite ones. So give me just a second here. Okay, so my first one is that from the state of Arkansas, you can cross a border into every state that Arkansas borders by going south. Every single state. So some of them are easy, right? I mean, Louisiana obviously is south of Arkansas. Here is a border with Texas that's easy to go due south and cross. Plenty of places you can cross the Mississippi River and go into Mississippi. Actually, some places you don't even have to cross the river. So, look at some of these weird places like right here where the border actually has land that you can cross. And that is in part because the Mississippi River, you can see here how it's not connected there anymore. This is actually kind of like a lake because the Mississippi River changes and moves. And so now the Mississippi's right here, but it used to go right here. So the borders represent where the borders were set when the Mississippi River was in those places. But now look at, there's a spot where Arkansas has land on the south side of the Mississippi River. So those ones obviously make sense. But then you have the two weird ones. One is Oklahoma, which is west of Arkansas, and the other is Missouri. So Missouri's pretty easy. You see here where this part of Missouri actually goes there, so you can go south from this part of Arkansas to enter Missouri. But then here, you can see where Arkansas has this little spot that goes kind of southeast, ever so slightly. And so from, say, Evansville, you could walk due south, and eventually you would cross over into Oklahoma. So that one's kind of a fun one for me. The other one is that the closest state to Africa of all the United States is Maine, which is also one of our furthest north. It's the northernmost on the East Coast anyway. But Maine is closer to the closest point in Africa than any other U.S. state. So that one's kind of cool. And also, Maine is the place where you can see the sunrise the earliest in the United States. And that's at a place here near Bar Harbor that is just beautiful. It's a really cool place. You go up here, there's a mountain that you can go up to the top of in this area. I forget what it's called now, but you go up to the top of it and you can see just incredible views in Acadia National Park. Is it Cadillac Mountain maybe? I think that's probably it. I think that's the spot where you can first see the sunrise in the continental United States because you're up really high. It's the highest point on the East Coast. And you're also really far east. So those are two of my favorites that I really like. Let me know what yours are, your fun little quirks about the United States map. Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.